completing New Hampshire October 13th, Route 25A south to the top of Mount Cube. We are back here in New Hampshire after we had left here in June due to torrential rain. We had drove up here last night and got to the parking lot off of Route 25A at around 11 p.m. It is Sunday morning, and we had woke up at 6 o'clock to a foggy day. We started our climb up to Mount Cube in the fog, and the sun had finally broke through after the first hour of our hike. The foliage was beautiful up here, with colors popping out as the sun shined down on them. I had taken a lot of pictures of the foliage. The smell of fall was in the air, and I found some apples on the ground near an old apple tree. The trail was very pretty in the hemlock forest, mixed with some white birch trees. We reached the alpine area as we climbed up and reached the top of Mount Cube. It had clouded over again within the second hour of our hike, and the top was completely fogged in. The wind was cold here, and we descended down out of the wind to eat our lunch. Dave had purchased a new camp stove called an emberlit stove. It uses small sticks, and he had got it going with his new flint fire starter, a real survival technique for him. He got the fire going, and we heated some tea to go with our peanut butter and jelly lunch. We met another hiker on our way out who told us that he was hiking the New Hampshire 38 peaks that were above 3,000 feet and under 4,000 feet. He said that it was an awesome hike to do. We descended as fast as we could possibly do without falling due to fog and the cold temperatures. We needed to make it back down to our truck camper and then move to Quintown Road so that we can get started on our hike early tomorrow to climb back up to Smarts Mountain. October 14th, Quintown Road south to the top of Smarts Mountain. We had camped here on Quintown Road near Jacobs River. It was a cold night, and the weather forecast for tomorrow was for showers with the summits in the clouds. We woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was still dark. It was cold and damp out. However, it looked like the sun was coming up. We packed up and headed out onto the dirt logging road to the AT. The clouds were just starting to obscure the blue skies with some dampness in the air. It was a 4.3 miles hike up to Smart Mountain, and the sun had come back out. The fog had broken up as we started our steep climb, and it had become more scenic in a nice white birch forest with some beautiful fall foliage popping out in the lower elevation. As we climbed up higher, some of the leaves were gone from the trees, and then we climbed even more steeper and entered the alpine zone. We saw some moose prints and poop, some bear prints, and some wolf or coyote prints up here in the mud. We reached the cabin in about 4 hours after leaving the camper. However, it was locked from inside with a slide bolt that we could see from a window. And the window was also locked. No one was inside the cabin, and there was trash inside. How did they lock it from the inside? And how did they get outside after they locked everything? Dave had remembered when we were here about 6 years ago when the cabin was open and we explored the inside of it. He normally does not remember anything about our hikes after we get back. We ate our lunch on the porch and then went up the fire tower. As we were sitting here enjoying the view, the water bottle slipped out of the backpack and landed about 50 feet below onto a large rock, bounced off the rock and hit some more rocks before landing somewhere into the woods. It was our last full water bottle, and I was upset that we lost the water bottle, most likely broken on the ground with all the water pooling onto the ground, and we still had a long way back to our truck with no water. We climbed down, and I was shocked when Dave came out of the woods with the water bottle. The Nalgene water bottle was still intact with water inside it. No leak or damage to the water bottle. We saw and heard a large bird flying through the pine trees. We could not make out what kind of bird it was as it flew around the trees. We later saw the strangest prints in a muddy section of the trail. It looked like a human footprint, not from a boot, but from a bare foot, and it was a large footprint, and I thought that it was a bear print at first, but it did not look like a bear. It looked like a human footprint. Dave said that it was probably a hiker hiking barefoot on the trail, but it is October and the ground was damp and cold. Wasn't it a little cold out to be hiking barefoot? We saw the footprints when we had arrived at the top, but we had seen no other hikers on the trail today, and the prints looked fresh. On the way down, we got bombarded by a horde of black flies. In October, Dave said that he thought that they were flying ants. However, they bit me like a black fly would, and they got under my hat and was crawling around on my head, biting me. And they were also inside our shirts, too. We made it back to our camper, and we found some bugs still crawling around inside our clothing. We could not squish them easily. I never knew that these bugs would be still out in October in New Hampshire, at an elevation around 3,000 feet in the alpine zone. We had hiked a lot in October up here and had never seen anything like this. I was still questioning those footprints that I had seen in the mud while we were relaxing in the camper. Large, bare human footprints. I started to question the existence of Bigfoot. We had a nice camping experience here on Quintown Road. It was mostly quiet, and we had 2 days of hiking with no one else around. We will be sad to leave this area. October 15th, 3 Mile Road in Hanover, south to Trescott Road. It was about 11 o'clock when we got onto the trail today. It was a late start because we had to drive here from Quintown Road over dirt roads. We had recognized this area from before when we had hiked north from this road. It was a cloudy day again, the third cloudy and foggy day of this trip. The colors here were beautiful with all the maple trees. We saw a lot of maple syrup lines running through the woods near the trail. We had seen lots of wildflowers in this area. I believe I had even seen a yarrow and even one goldenrod still out in October. The trail was all downhill from where we had parked. We passed through a nice mix of white pine and hardwood forest. Then we crossed Etna Road, and the trail crossed a small brook and went around a cemetery. It would be very spooky at dusk in October. There was a road here with an old foundation and a large apple tree. There were even some apples on the ground, and we had picked up some for our oatmeal tomorrow morning. It was a nice section of the trail, and we reached the AT parking lot off of Trescott Road. It looks like a nice parking lot to camp in, so we will be able to get an early start on the trail tomorrow. It was a little busy when we got out. People were arriving back in the parking lot after their hike late, as we were taking our bath inside the camper, inside a plastic bathtub that Dave had made under our bench/lower sleeping bed. Later, as we were relaxing, the police arrived and was doing a speed check from the parking lot. However, they did not check on us, which was nice. October 16th, Trescott Road south to Velvet Rocks near Velvet Rocks Shelter. Today we had the best weather of this trip. It was partly sunny, cool with very few bugs. This section was surprisingly hard, but yes, very beautiful. We climbed most of the way from the road to Velvet Rocks, an area with rock cliffs covered in green moss and a lot of hemlock trees. No view here, but the fall foliage mixed with the green hemlock trees was spectacular here. I had wrote in my hiker diary that we had hiked in here in 2009 when we had come in from the town of Hanover and we did a loop trail back to our car. I wrote then that this area was very hard. I had thought back then that maybe we were just a little wimpy as it was one of our first hikes up here. But no, it was very hard even today. This area was very beautiful and not to miss because it looked similar to Sage's Ravine in Connecticut. We went back to our camper and drove over to the parking lot that we had parked in 2009 and did the road walk to the bridge on Main Street and the New Hampshire-Vermont state line. New Hampshire is done. It is our 4th state completed.